Okay, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay.
You want my name?
Yeah, give me your name, and if you could spell your last name for me, please, since this will be transcribed.
Well, my whole name is Patricia Leimbach, and that's spelled Leimbach.
Okay. And tell me which church it is that you belong to.
I'm a member of the Brownhelm Congregational United Church of Christ, which was established, of course, as a congregational church, and considering recent subsequent mergers, is now a part of the United Church of Christ.
Okay. Do you know about when that merger took place?
The merger was made with the German Evangelical and Reformed Church in the 50s. I'd say around 59. So, and that was a German church, and ours was an English church, because this region of northern Ohio was settled by basically English people who came out here from Stockbridge, Massachusetts. And it's my understanding that after the French and Indian Wars, there were many villages that were burned, and this section of the country was set aside for settlers who may have chosen to leave there and go someplace more fertile or safer. And I think the members of, or the founders of our church were among those people. And Stockbridge was the original home church in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. And when did you become a member of the church?
Well, I didn't join the church until I was married in 1950, and I probably joined the church shortly thereafter in 51. So I'm considered one of the Auslanders who came over here from Amherst. And
One of the what was that word?
Auslander, it means people that come from the outside, from the German.
Okay.
But I didn't have a church. My people were, we've never established whether they were atheists or agnostics or what. But my family wasn't churched, but I always felt the need of a church. And so when I married Paul, it was the natural thing to do. And I have always been interested in the history of the community, and spent a lot of time one year going back through the old church book, which dated back to pre-Civil War times. I don't know that we had the very first years, but there was talk of the anti-slavery movement and so on in the church, so I know that it was this secretary's book was old, and I researched it in order to write a play about the founders of the church. They came here about, I think it was 1807, and the church was founded very shortly thereafter. The prominent, prominent early members of the church had names like Whittlesey, Bacon, Perry, and Fairchild. The Fairchild name stands out because they were very instrumental in the development of Oberlin College. In fact, there was consideration made originally to establish the college out here, but it was decided that the ground was too fertile and shouldn't be utilized for that sort of purpose when there was ground a few miles down the trail that was not as fertile. But the land that was appropriated for the church as it now stands was given by the Fairchild family. And James Fairchild later went to Oberlin and became president of Oberlin College through its founding early years.
You mentioned that you had felt a need to be churched, and that when you married, that became a reality for you. Talk a little bit about the importance of being a member of the church has been for you over the years.
Well, I suppose it was a desire to be a part of a community. I came from Amherst, and my people were farm people. My father had a fruit farm, and died young, and my mother really ran that fruit farm, which is still in existence, and Fenton's Country Market is a part of my background. But the children I went to school with talked about going off to church camp and going to parties at the church and so on. And my mother, it wasn't easy for my mother to see that we went to church, so I don't think she bothered in the first place. She had 8 pregnancies in 11 years and a farm to establish at the same time. So, and it just wasn't a part of our background. But that need of belonging to a community reached me. I did go to a Sunday school in Lorraine with my friends at a Methodist church, and when they joined the church officially, my mother said, "No, I don't want you to join the church. When you grow up and have analyzed these things, you can make your own choice." So, having married a Congregationalist, I joined the Congregational church.
How were you, after your children came, and how were you and the children involved within the church?
We were always involved with the church from the first thing. We never missed a Sunday going to church unless we were away somewhere, and then often we looked for a church. It was just what you did. And I stayed home initially. Well, I was a teacher when I came here in what is now the Firelands community, but I taught in the Henrietta Township schools. And and then when I had children, I stayed home basically, and there were most of the women in my were homemakers. They weren't all farm wives, but we had time to do things at the church, and rural churches have always had a need to keep the roof up by earning extra money. So I went to the Ladies' Aid or the Women's Society, and I became interested in the larger connections of the church. The first, what was known as the Medina Association of Congregational Churches, and there was a Church Women's Society, so I naturally went to the meetings and opened my mouth, which I'm pretty good at, and I got elected to other positions, and I wasn't in the church more than 10 years before I was on the state board. And I happened to be on the board at the time that the merger was going on between the German Reformed Church and the Congregational Church. These were two diametrically opposed what shall I say, not spiritualities exactly, but they were different people. They were German people and they were English people. And I always said that the Germans were the better farmers, and although this community was established by English people, it was the Germans who really made it flourish eventually. And the English went on to other sorts of professions. And so that it wasn't too many years, I would say, when the church had been established 50 years, the Germans were already moving in and taking over. The German Reformed Church was north of us, down where the railroad track came through Brownhelm, a place called Brownhelm Station because there was a train station there. And that church down there was established by the German immigrants who came, as I understand it, because of the wars that had gone on in Germany between the Germans and the Russians, and the people got tired of sending their kids to the front to die and encouraged them to leave the country. And the quarries were opening up there, and I think some of those Germans worked in those early quarries, and they formed their own church. And it wasn't until, well, let's see, it would have been, well, I don't know exactly what they're, I'll send you to somebody that can talk about that church, because it still stands and is now our historical society. But, and there was intermarriage between the Germans and the English, and it just happened that the Congregational Church had a bigger building, I guess, or something. And
How did, when that merger occurred and the two churches combined, correct? How was the congregation impacted, would you say?
it was so long, it was, how should I put it? The church, the people were already pretty much intermarried. My husband's family were German, and they went to that German Reformed Church, had gone there. But when my father-in-law married my mother-in-law, she came from Berlin Heights, a little farther west, and I think that her family had already started to go to the Congregational Church up there. Well, they went to a neutral church. It was a new church, and so they chose the Congregational Church. And little by little, the German church, as it existed in Brownhelm, dwindled away, and it didn't actually completely die until, I would say back in the 70s, 1970s, the late 70s, maybe the last.
So there wasn't a big,
There wasn't.
a big
No, the
problem
Germans kept
within
going
that.
to their church after the merger, but the Congregationalists had already pretty much married them in, so to speak.
Is there anything else in the history of the church since you've been a member that might have been a difficulty within the church
Well,
in the administration?
I touched on the fact that there was talk of abolitionists in the church, and the Fairchilds were, I could tell by what I read in the book, were a prominent voice in the church. And James Fairchild's father, who lived next door to the present church building, proposed a bill, what shall I say, a law or statute that the church would adopt that would assent to being abolitionists. But that was defeated initially. And Mr. Fairchild absented himself from the church at the time and didn't come back for a month or two. And later, with a little revision, the bill was passed. But obviously, they were not all in favor of abolition. And I suppose that the German people who belonged to I don't think the German people had really entered into our church at that time, so I can't blame it on the Germans. It was just some stiff-necked New Englanders that were not going to assent to the abolition of slavery. But eventually they got behind the movement.
So pretty much over the time that you've been in the church, it's been fairly smooth as far as the congregation is
Yes, the
concerned,
only
and,
problems that we had were the same in almost any church. We choose our own ministers. The Congregational church was always a pretty liberal sort of church. And when you have to go out and search for a new minister, or the one that you hire doesn't suit everybody in the congregation, you have your ups and your downs. But we never had not to my knowledge anyway, we never had a rebellion where some of them got up and left and went elsewhere to make a new church. There were always people that, yes, they left because of feelings between the old pastor and the new pastor. There was in the late 1800s, around 1850 or so, I think there was a national, what do you call it, anti-liquor, what do you call that?
prohibition.
There was a drive to get liquor and spirits completely out of the congregation, and a lot of the men signed a pledge that they would forswear hard liquor. That was written up in the church. And of course there was a women's temperance movement within the church, which was just dying out almost completely when I came to the church, but not before a statute was written into the Constitution that we would never have liquor served in that church.
And that still stands.
And that
today.
still stands.
We
And
talk
to
ab-
my knowledge, it's never been violated, but
Yeah.
you don't know about those things.
No, you don't, yeah.